last week. We heard from a member of our synod. Steve Thompson came and told us a little about what's going on in our synod. And I think it's important as we've been going through our study of the book of Acts this fall to remember that exactly what you're talking about is what we've been studying. We've been studying what it means to be active and part of the body of Christ that is bigger than ourselves. We're going to be jumping back into that series of Acts this week. And I want to start off with a bit of a quote from a book. I was reading an article earlier this week. It was about a book. It was a book that was written in 1945. It was called The World, the Flesh, and Father Smith. And it was written by a Scottish writer named Bruce Marshall. And there's this main character named Father Smith. And there's this young, seductive woman named Dana Agdala. And so I was reading an article about it, and I'm going to read you a section of the article here just to kind of set the context, all right? Because it's going to be, give context to what we're talking about. Miss Dana Agdala is provocatively accented by her frock blowing all around her lovely legs. She introduces herself to Father Smith as the author of the scintillating and best-selling Naked and Unashamed. But perhaps you haven't read them, she says to him. She asked the priest, "Tell me, do you get much response to the old story these days?" She's a modernist and has long rejected all the poppycock about baptism and purity and the virgin birth, because, of course, it's against all modern science and obstetrics. She explained to our cleric that she'd been dying for years to meet a Catholic priest, but somehow none of them ever showed up at the party she went to. She said she had oodles and oodles to ask about I don't know, whatever I have time for. And so Father Smith says he invites her to walk along with him to his next appointment and ask along the way. Among the many questions built up upon her judgment of the silliness of faith, she asks about his sexuality and how he manages to, as she put it, live without us. Easily and confidently, Father Smith says that in his view, women's bodies are rarely perfect and soon grow old and sag, and always the contemplation of them, even at their best, is a poor and boring substitute for walking with God in his house as a friend. Miss Agdala judges that Father Smith's answers proves that what she had always maintained about Christians, that religion is only a substitute for sex. Father Smith counters roundly. He says, "I still prefer to believe that sex is a substitute for religion, and that the young man who rings the bell at the brothel is unconsciously looking for God." And so we're going to talk about today this concept that we go to the brothel or go to the marketplace of the flesh. And this doesn't have to apply just to sex. It can apply to just about anything in our life, any idol we have, anything that we go to regularly in the search for the satisfaction of our souls, as opposed to the person of Jesus, which I refer to as the marketplace of the flesh, which I think is going to be pointed to our conversation today. And we're going to be reconsidering how we struggle with the very same things that Miss Agdala does in understanding faith, as well as the people of Athens. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I want to pray for us, and then we're going to jump into our text today. So let's begin in prayer. Father Christ, we know that you're God. You're the one who's changed our lives. You've come in, you've broken down the walls, you've made changes to us, and yet, Father, we admit that so often we fight you, we don't listen, we stop ourselves from following you because we're scared. We're scared of giving up the idols, the things that we go to in the marketplace that give us a sense of self and belonging. And Lord, it's scary to trust you and follow you. So Lord, make us obedient today. Give us eyes that understand what you're really asking for, hearts that have the courage to believe and follow and trust you. And I pray, Lord, that you will have your way in this service today, that by your Holy Spirit, you will convict our hearts and that we will believe in you and follow after you better than we've known before today. We pray these things in Jesus' name, by his blood, amen. So, as I mentioned, we're moving through the story of Acts. That's short for the Acts of the Apostles. And we're looking at what it means to follow Jesus in a post-resurrection world. What does it mean that the Holy Spirit Spirit has come into the lives of believers. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we saw how in Acts 16, how Paul is traveling throughout. He's gone into Europe, and he's started witnessing there, and we've seen people of all these different backgrounds come to faith. We saw a young slave girl come to faith who's never known any sense of freedom. We saw a rich businesswoman named Lydia come to faith as she experienced an intellectual awakening. We saw a jailer and his family come to faith after the gospel was demonstrated to him in a new way. And we saw that faith comes through hearing and witnessing the gospel in action and what the gospel should do, both in people's lives and in the cultures that it interacts with. And this week, we read that Paul has moved on from Philippi, where that stuff happened. He's gone through Thessalonica and Berea, and he's planted small churches there, and then eventually got chased out because people weren't digging on his message. And while those churches, so he's leaving behind churches. In each place he goes to, he's preaching the gospel, people are coming to faith, and this is threatening the cultures that he's preaching the gospel in, and especially the folks from the synagogue who hadn't believed his message have come after him. And so he's moved on in each city, but he's leaving behind a church, and he's leaving behind leaders. And so what we find here is at this point, Paul has moved on to Athens. He's by himself. He's in Athens, and he's waiting for some of the guys that he's left behind, Timothy and Silas. And so we read in chapter 17, verse 16, Paul was waiting for them in Athens. So he reasoned in the synagogues with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. And so it's this question of the marketplace in verse 17 that we're going to be wrestling with here. Okay, so when I say the marketplace, often you and I, what we think of, I don't know, like at least I do, like go to the grocery store or little fruit stands or something you find in a small village. But this is not anything like that. Okay. So when I say the marketplace, when I say Athens, or Paul walking through the marketplace, we need to understand that Athens, while it was no longer in Rome, the seat of the militaristic or governmental power within the Roman Empire, it was still the seat of culture and intellectual prowess. And so when you went to Athens, you were going there for much more than any one thing. It's kind of like everything could be found there. So it was this free and allied city with Rome, but it was known for its philosophy, for its architecture, for its sculpture, for its literature and its art, for its history and democracy. And when we hear the marketplace, we need to think that this is a one-stop shop for everything. Okay, and we're in a world without technology we see today, so there were no scholarly journals. All right, so if you wanted your ideas to be heard, you needed to go and debate with other thinkers in the marketplace, right? In the forum. If you wanted to learn the ideas of the day, you had to go and listen to these debates and figure out who was winning, what the best arguments were. If you wanted music, you had to go to the place where the artists were, okay? If you wanted sports, there was no TV. You had to go to the place where the gymnasiums and the coliseums were, okay? There was no media outlets. If you wanted to know what was going on in the world, you went to where the heralds were. And this is all happening at the marketplace, okay? So there would be sporting arenas and gyms, there'd be galleries, moneylenders, there'd be civil services, judges, you need things like that, lawyers, everything would be there from municipal halls to social services to brothels, right? Everything is happening right here, and people come knocking at the door looking for whatever it is to solve their issue, right? It's the home of justice and philosophy and pleasure and culture. And we read that Paul was greatly distressed to see the city was full of idols. And so what we need to realize is that the marketplace is not exclusive to material goods. But as we talked about like the philosophy and people needing to debate, this was also the home of ideologies. And this includes the religious search. Okay, so people would also come to the marketplace to learn about the various pantheon of gods. And so at one point we actually read that Paul, in verse 22 through 23, Paul has come to the Areopagus, this place at a hill, and where there's debate, and he says, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with the inscription, 'To an unknown God.' So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. And that's what he goes on. He says, look, I found this doorway. You know that you don't know everything. Let me tell you who this God is, who you know you should worship, but you don't have the answer for yet. Okay? And so they don't have this message of Jesus yet. And so you can imagine, and we know the marketplace is the home for everything you're looking for. And so you can imagine the people of Athens and Paul himself walking down the street in Athens. There's people calling out their goods. There's people propagating their ideas. It's got to just be this cacophony of sound and energy and color. And as he's going along, he's passing by all these temples too. Okay? There's the temple to Athena, the god of wisdom. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. There's Hermes, the god of trade. Dionysus, the god of winemaking and fertility. And so we kind of get this picture that when you go to the marketplace, like if I need a spatula, then I'm going to go to Target of Athens, right? I'm going to go find the spatula vendor. I'm going to go there. But if I need to get pregnant, then maybe I'm going to go to the temple of Dionysus, right? I'm going to go and do the thing that I have to do to receive the thing I'm looking for, right? If I want money, if I want my business to do well, then I'm going to go to Hermes, and I'm going to go to his temple, and I'm going to offer what I need to offer there, right? And so this is the marketplace is all about receiving an answer to your felt need, right? And so we don't have a place like that. But as I was kind of thinking about this, I feel like we just call it Google. Or Amazon, this is the place where we're like, do I want music or sports or sex or entertainment or civil or legal help or God, right? I'm just going to search it, right? I'm going to find out what's being said out there. I'm going to find out what I can order. I'm going to find out what I can have delivered to my door. I'm going to do what I have to do to resolve the felt need. And so also, don't get me wrong now. What I'm saying is I'm not against the marketplace. You and I, we all have felt needs. And it is perfectly reasonable for us to pursue ends to those needs, right? The means by which those needs might be met. That's the human condition, that's okay. But the problem is when we go to the marketplace with this sort of misguided, semi-religious feel, the marketplace can take on a semi-religious significance. This is the thing. I think sometimes we think that people today are less religious than people were in ancient Greece. That somehow, a long time ago, everybody was really religious, and now after the Enlightenment, we're smart and we're not anymore. Not true, okay? I was reading up on the Pew Forum earlier this week, and Pew Forum does a ton of national studies, and while this number is going to seem really high, 22% of Americans identify as non-religious these days, okay? But what we need to understand is about the 22%, only 3% identify as atheists. 16+% identify as spiritual, but not having a specific religious affiliation, right? They might believe in God, but they're just not Lutheran or Baptist or Hindu or Muslim, right? They know that something might be this, but they continue, even if they're not specifically agnostic. And so what this means is that while people may identify with a particular religious faith, spirituality is alive and well in the postmodern West. And I think this is true because just like people in Athens, and just like people today, they still want that sense of inner calm, right? They want a sense of the transcendent, to cover the woes of their daily life. They want a sense of the sacred. They want to feel like their best selves. And so we go to the market, including religions sometimes. We try on goods and ideologies and sexualities and political and social affinities, but also gods, in search of finding the heart satisfaction. And I believe, really, if we're honest, this is what I call worship, right? Worship is the thing we give ourselves to, that we spend our time and energy pursuing and consuming in hopes of achieving a specific end. Okay? And so you can imagine Paul walking these streets, seeing people live out that search for material satisfaction, for religious satisfaction, for personal satisfaction, and him going, I don't think this is it. This isn't going to satisfy their hearts. I don't see anybody being here and going, yeah, I finally arrived. This is it. So And he goes, I remember being that person. And I believe that the answer to their deepest heart issue is the person of Jesus. And so what we come to understand too is that for all the people that are going to the marketplace, as well as for Paul, the marketplace is not a destination. Okay? The marketplace is a doorway which people go to find something better. And Paul says, I'm going to go to the marketplace too, because I'm going to help people find that something better with them in the marketplace, right? I'm going to help them find Jesus. So in verse 24, he's giving them his testimony. He's basically giving them the message. And he says, look, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. And so Paul says, I know that God is above the marketplace and actually has all things and all needs. He can resolve all of those things, all right? Yet I think for you and I, we struggle sharing this message with other people. Why do we do that? Why do we struggle to share this message of Jesus that Paul so boldly stands up in the marketplace and delivers? I think it's for a couple of reasons, okay? And they're related. The first one is, I think if we're honest, if we're really honest, there's a little voice in the back of your head that says, what if it doesn't work? What if I tell this person about Jesus and it's just, like, it's not enough? It's not appealing enough. It doesn't change their heart and their life, and I don't want to look silly. And what if it doesn't work? What if my own doubts prove true? I think there's part of it there. But I think the second part of it is this, is that our culture is very uncomfortable with any one of us saying to somebody else, let me tell you what is true. Okay? We're very uncomfortable with the idea that we can tell someone they should worship a specific God, that the idea of God is specific and not general, that Bernice and Dale and Jerry, you guys can all have your own gods. Do relationship with God the way that you feel you should do relationship with God. And I think we have to ask why. Why do we feel these things? And I think it's because you and I and first century Athens all share something in common. And that's this. We have a misguided view of what religion is in the first place. We go to religion as we go to the marketplace, as they go to religion and go to the marketplace seeking one end. Will this make me happy? Will this give me what I want? Will this fulfill my heart in a new way? Will this be the thing I'm finally looking for when I can finally rest? And this is why we go to religion. This is why we think we go to Jesus. The problem with this, of course, well, there's multiple problems with this, but let me put it this way. I think most Americans and Athenians, probably, I don't know if they technically would do this, but Americans do this at least, we like to divide our lives between the sacred and the secular. Okay? And we have this belief that my sacred life is where I pursue self-fulfillment. I step into my sacred life, the life of religion and belief and ideology. And this is about me, and this is personal, and this is just about who I am and how it makes me feel. And then I step into the secular life, and this is about what's good for everybody. This is how I should live externally. This is how I should give myself to the world in my secular life. But there's a problem with this, and I think it's this, is that beliefs, if they're true, must affect the way you live. Your internal beliefs must have an impact on your external world. All right, let me put it this way. If I truly and really believe that 2 + 2 = 5, okay? If 2 + 2 = 5 answers a need in my heart and I find satisfaction there, okay? I can believe that, but as soon as I let 2 + 2 = 5, enter into a 2 + 2 = 4 world, there's going to be a conflict. Every time I go to the grocery store, every time I do my taxes, somebody's going to say, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Right? You did it wrong. Because the truth of this mathematical equation is fixed. And when it's brought into a fixed world, it causes conflict, all right? Your beliefs change the way you live. And Jesus' message was that not just, hey, if you believe in him, you can have an internal sense of calm. No, it was an external, it wasn't a sacred or secular, it was the sacred and secular message that God, the God of the whole universe, loves his whole creation and wants everyone to repent and place their hope and salvation in him, and that Christianity was not a movement. And later, Paul's going to give his testimony to a guy named Felix, and he says, this didn't happen in a corner, all right? He's saying the Christian faith didn't happen just in people's hearts and they're happy with it. No, it happened in the public sphere, all right? You want to know if Jesus rose from the dead? Go talk to the people who saw the risen Jesus, all right? Jesus was an actual historical character who came and lived and died and was resurrected and had actual followers and spoke actual words and gave an actual message. This didn't happen in someone's heart. This happened in the world. And if it happened in the world, it's relevant to all the people that are still here. Okay? You might think, look, this is that message, saying that Jesus is the way to heaven. I think in our culture it feels very closed-minded. It feels very, very fundamentalist and very Western. But I actually think the exact opposite is true. When we assume that someone's absolute worldview should not affect the way that they live their lives, we're actually being very closed-minded. All right? We're undermining people's personal experience and their beliefs. If I tell someone of any worldview, whether they're atheist or agnostic or Islamic or Christian or Hindi, and I tell them that their worldview should not affect the way that they buy goods or vote or build community or pursue family or sex or war or peace or finances, say, your religion can be totally yours as long as it doesn't affect anything with anybody else ever. We're actually being very close. No, your beliefs affect your world. Because they affect the way you live. They affect what you believe to be right and wrong and true and false and good and bad. And you can't live outside of those things. One's worldview is not a private area of your life, but is universal to all of us. And so we have to ask, if faith is so public, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just go into our own marketplace? Go down to Pike's Market and get a soapbox and start yelling? Maybe I should just go on some chat group start posting on Facebook or find some sort of thread on Reddit and start making sure everybody knows my opinion. Okay? We should first understand, though, before we go and just jump into that world, that Paul understood the people he was trying to reach, and we need to do that too. Okay? In verse 21, we read that all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. So Paul knows his audience. When he goes and delivers his message, he's saying, no, I actually know this is very appropriate and it'll be welcome here. This is the place in which this message, not everybody's going to like it, but this is an appropriate place to have this message. For you, it may look like an online forum, but it also may look like your dining room table or across the bar, okay? And secondly, we should understand that Paul understood his culture in this way. At one point he says, and some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. What Paul's saying is that, no, I get you too. I know you're artists, and I know you're musicians, and I know you're poets. I know the way you think because I've cared enough to spend time understanding your culture. And you need to understand the culture of the people you spend time with and care about, right? If you go to them and say, no, I told them to read the Gospel of John, they didn't, so sorry, suckers, you're out, right? Then all we're doing is we're actually just putting a line in the sand and saying, you didn't conform. I'm not actually caring about that person, I'm just telling them they didn't do religion right, so I think they're out, okay? So, here's the other part, though. You might think, Jordan, that's a little unfair. Paul the Apostle? Is Paul the Apostle? Right? Paul is the guy that wrote most of the New Testament. All right? He is the dude. So why in the world are we supposed to do everything that Paul the Apostle did? What's our job? And so to do that, I want to take us, actually, I don't have slides for this, but I want to take us to a second story. Galen DeFeason, he's a professor at our seminary, and also I heard another preacher talk about it earlier this week, but they're very fond of a story that takes place in 2 Kings. It's about a guy named Naaman the Syrian. Okay? Now, Naaman is a commander of the army of the king of Aram, okay, which is in modern-day Syria. He was a highly regarded general. He had had military conquest even in Israel, and he's been very successful. But he was also a leper. Okay, severe skin condition. His body's breaking down on him, and he had heard that Elisha, a prophet in Israel, might be able to heal him. And so he heard about it actually from a slave girl whom he had taken captive, who was from Israel. Okay, so she witnesses to him. He says, "I'll go check it out." He goes to Israel, goes to meet Elisha, and Elisha tells him to wash himself 7 times in the Jordan River, and then when he does this, his flesh will be restored. And sort of after some grumbling about sort of nationalistic things, being like, Syria's rivers are better than Israel, why did I come all this way here? He finally goes, okay, well, I'm here, I might as well do this. Okay? And he goes into the river, and behold, 7 times, and his skin is restored. It actually says he has the skin of a young child. It's just like soft and fresh, and he's like, whoa, this is amazing! And he goes back, and we read this in verse 15. Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept the gift from your servant." The prophet answered, "As surely as the Lord lives whom I serve, I will not accept a thing." Even though Naaman urged him, he refused. "If you will not," said Naaman, "please let your servant be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry. For your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon, to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this. Go in peace," Elisha says. Now, so what's all that about? What's the whole mules and dirt thing about? Is this just some superstitious thing that Naaman is doing, or is he trying to bring, like, I think sometimes we think this is a territorial thing, like he's trying to bring back the God of Israel. Like, I got some dirt, so I got a little bit of God with me, and he carries it back. I don't think so. I think what he's doing is he's living out his testimony publicly. Okay? So what this means is that Naaman's doing 2 things here. One is he's not running from his culture. He's not saying, "Oh, I've met the real God now. I can't go back. I can't go back to Syria. I have to give up my job and my life, and that's just pagan and dirty, and I need to keep myself clean. I'm not going to have anything to do with it." Right? He doesn't say that. But neither does he say, "Oh, cool. Like, I went to the marketplace. I met God. Religion did its work for me. I got what I wanted out of religion, and now I can go back and just live however I want." He says, "No, like, I've experienced something significant here. All right? But I am this person. So how do I live this new revelation of faith and truth in a world that doesn't understand my God?" Okay, and this is what I think he's doing. I think when he's talking about bringing this dirt back here, but he's actually saying, I'm going to do my job, but I'm going to do it in such a way that represents the heart of how God of Israel has changed my life. He's basically saying, look, I'm going to bring this dirt back to me. I'm only going to kneel. I'm only going to worship on the dirt of Israel, on God alone. I'm going to remember that this is a public testimony to my actual faith. People will know I'm in there, but they'll know I'm worshiping God of Israel only. Okay? He took his faith into a public space. And this I don't know what this looks like for you guys. We each have to decide what this looks like for us individually. And it's not always super simple. We need to wrestle with it. But we also know that not everybody's going to understand. Even in Paul's message here in Athens, we read that he starts talking about the resurrection of the dead, and people are like, whatever, I'm out. Let's go to Taco Bell. And they left, right? They don't have interest in hearing his message anymore. But some people believe, okay? And this leads us... Sorry, I lost my spot. And this leads us to a reminder that your role as a Christian is not to save people, but it is to share with others how you have been saved. And this is something that will happen as you come to know Christ better. And this should give us pause a little bit. Because for some of us, we don't share Christ. Because our faith has never taken that second step. We're still kind of in the marketplace. We go, I met God, He's good, it works for me, I'm satisfied with that. You want to worship your God? That's cool. I'm going to worship my God. Beans, right? Cool beans, everything's fine. Right? And this is just, I think the problem is this, when we read that Paul shared his faith, he did it not because he was like, cool beans, I did my religious job. We read that he was greatly distressed. We need to ask ourselves, do we care? And I don't say this to make anybody feel guilty. I just make us ask questions. Do we care about your coworkers? About your family? About the people on the street? Do we care enough to give of our time and our energy? Do we care enough to actually share the gospel with them, both in deed and word? And it's hard. I think Paul shared his testimony publicly, and Naaman shared his public testimony publicly. Not because they were acting out some sort of moral obligation, where they had to do a thing to keep God happy. That's what you do in the marketplace. But both Paul and Naaman had already received what they wanted from God. God had already met them in their situation, and they had begun to trust Him. And as they began to trust Him, they started to live out of that. I think what they show us here is that our hearts conform to the objects we worship. If you worship sex, your life will reflect the preoccupation with sex. If you worship fitness, your life will reflect the preoccupation with fitness. If you worship entertainment, your life will reflect the preoccupation with entertainment. And if you worship God, your life will reflect the preoccupation with love. We read in the Old Testament that God is a jealous God. And this doesn't mean that God is sort of petty and gets mad at you for not sending a card on Father's Day or something. That's not what jealous means here. What he means is that he jealously desires us. It means that you can't love someone and be indifferent to their suffering. It means that you can't love someone and be indifferent to a danger they face. It means you can't love someone without a jealous desire to see what's best for them. And if they're embracing something that's going to hurt them, you can't help but jealously desire something better for them. People are afraid of making truth statements because we're afraid we'll be seen as fanatics, but I think the opposite is true. You can't love someone and be indifferent to their choices. What Paul understood, and what Bruce Marshall and his character Father Smith understood, is that under all our psychological and political and financial and relational issues are idols. And that there's only two types of people in the world. Either people that are seeking to be saved by idols, or people who are being saved by Jesus. People who are worshiping good things as the best things, or people seeing things as a reflection of God's love for them. Spirituality in the modern world is not a buffet, even though I'd like it to be, right? That would be easier for me if it was. But it's specific, and it's not a private affair. That's not a private affair. Our faith is public, and it touches our earnings and our politics and our relationships. And that's not a statement about what you should believe. It's just a reality of faith. What we're talking about today is that what I want us to do is this. Recognize that each one of us, just like all the people of Athens, have a tendency to spend our lives visiting the temples of Hermes and Apollos and Dionysus, the marketplace of the flesh and finances, and that while this is our tendency, it's not a destination. You do not find what satisfies the soul at the marketplace. You find the one who owns the marketplace and trust in his provision. And this is the story of Jesus. This is the story of a God who came down to people who cannot fend for themselves, who cannot provide for themselves, and who find within themselves an endless need that cannot be satisfied on this side of the grave. And he says, if you hope in me, I will meet you in your need. I will meet you in your losses, and I will bring you to the place of true satisfaction. We're going to transition now into a time of communion, the time when we celebrate this death of Jesus on our behalf. And I want to go ahead and begin by reading through some of the scriptures that tell us about this gospel message, all right? When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, he saved others. Let him save himself, if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one. The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, if you are the king of Jews, save yourself. There was written a notice above him which read, this is the king of the Jews. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. From about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Later, knowing that everything had been finished, and so the scripture would be filled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on the stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. With that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Jesus has said to his followers that this death is an invitation for us to follow him into that death. To know that the life we live is often a pursuit of things that cannot satisfy, that are only empty husks, that often will leave us only experiencing more of death in this world. But he says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And in 1 John 1:9, we're told that if we confess our sins to him, he is faithful and just and will forgive us of our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. At this time, I'm going to invite us each to take about a minute to spend some time praying to the Lord. If there's things you need to confess to him, search your heart and ask forgiveness now before we take on the body and the blood of Jesus. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Then he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this whenever you drink of it in remembrance of me." At this time, we'll ask the service to perform. Reminder that we hold the elements, we pass them out one at a time and hold them and then take them together as a congregation in a celebration of the communal nature of the body and blood of Christ.
Alone, who took on flesh, and fullness of God in heavenlies made, His gift of love and righteousness was scorned by the ones He came to save. Till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied for every sin. My name was made here in the death of Christ I live.
Take and eat the body of our Lord Jesus Christ. Broken for you.
In the ground, His body lay, the light of the world by darkness lay, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave He rose again, and as He stands in victory,
Take a drink